And welcome back. The month of March marks Social Work Month, a time to recognize professionals who work every day to support some of the most vulnerable and children we have in our communities. And right now in New York State, the need is urgent. In late 2023, there were over 10,000 certified foster homes, but only 15,000 children in need of placement. At the same time, youth mental health challenges remain high, with nearly 1 in 5 children nationally diagnosed with a mental, emotional, or behavioral health condition. Here now and sharing more about what it means for families and the role that social workers play, Jestin Jennings, Vice President of Foster Home Services, Preventive and ORR programs at JCCA. And thanks so much, Justin, for being with us.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Very impactful in really shaping the lives of a lot of people. And as we were saying, there's a little disparity, right? You've got a great need, and then at the same time, not as many people maybe responding to the call.
Right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that, we really want to shine light on is that we don't have as many families as we need, right? When you don't have as many families that you need for youth in foster care, one of the three things that kind of stand out to me are that you have youth who are displaced further from their homes, further from their communities and or families. And then you also are relying on those same foster parents to take in kids, as well as you don't have a great pool of foster parents that can match to the many different needs that our young people face. So, when you talk about, all of the things that come with that, some of our young people really do struggle with a lot of different mental health needs, behavior health needs, educational needs, and just in general, having that pool, a diverse pool of foster parents can really help support young people.
So I know you're doing great work over at JCCA. For people who may not be so familiar with the organization, just walk us through it a little bit about the work that JCCA does and your role there.
Okay, yes. So JCCA has been around for almost 200 years. With that, they provide children and family services. Most importantly, they do residential work, and then we also have the foster care work, where I'm specifically the VP for foster care services and prevention services. So within foster care, we provide recruitment for foster parents, training for foster parents, support for foster parents, as well as case planning, case management, educational supports, and then in general, just a core of supports for JCCA. We offer educational supports, medical and behavioral health and mental health supports for young people on campus, as well as in foster care.
Yeah. And for yourself, obviously, this is a very special month, right? We talked about Social Workers Month. Yeah. A lot of this with foster care does not happen without social workers. Yeah. How important are they in the work that you do?
They're very important. I mean, they're the backbone to what we do every day. I mean, you take the core of what a young person is, and they're in the system where they're alone, and you have this case planner or a social worker who's the connection and the connector to foster parents, to the families, to education, to mental health. And so they are really driving where this case goes. And so with that being said, without a social worker kind of connecting all of these different dots, you have dysfunction, right? And a kid who's already coming from dysfunction or coming from a traumatic experience, that only makes that even worse. So, really it's, just want to say thank you to all of our social workers who we have working for us and doing the work, because it is a thankless job, right? And so one of the things that I look at it as is that at the core value of social work, there's that altruistic kind of mentality, right? That selfless concern or welfare of others. And so I like to think that that's where we are trying to, where social workers are really kind of that driving force for cases.
Yeah. In the job of social worker, finding that stable home for a young person, that family. But we know that there's some barriers there. Right. Many of us on the outside don't really know what they are. Yeah. But can you take us a little bit behind the scenes and give us a little bit about, because people say, hey, there's this gap here, but why is this gap happening?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different areas. I mean, one of the things I really focus on is really just the different needs of our young people, right? And so, and I think just the awareness about, folks just coming to the table thinking that they have to have or know it all in terms of being a foster parent, right? Like, it's definitely can be a challenge, but that's where JCCA is there to provide you with that support, that training, and those resources to really help young people. And so the barriers that I kind of, when I really look at it, it just goes back to saying, okay, how well do we understand our young people, and how well can we best match them with foster parents? And so to do that, we have to recruit a diverse group of foster parents in all areas, right? Whether it be, you don't have to have it all to be a foster parent. We just want you to just understand that, you have understand the traumatic experience of these kids and be there and be willing to be a support for young people.
You know, a lot of our young people today are dealing with a lot of behavioral issues, right? Mental challenges, emotional challenges, things like that.
Yeah.
And it seems to be, I mean, it doesn't seem to be, it is what's happening. It's more prevalent in our community. Is this one of the barriers that people say, I don't want to take this on because I'm recognizing these numbers are like up there and I don't know if I have the energy or, you know, I got a good heart, but maybe I don't have the capacity.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I mean, you know, one of those issues that we face is that, you know, you get a young person that goes into a home and that young person, you know, doing that matching process demonstrate a different set of behaviors. And now that they're coming, they're adjusting to that home, they're adjusting the structure, they're adjusting to just that parental style. And now you have that young person displaying kind of those different triggers that might, you know, kind of set off their trauma response. And so now that foster parent doesn't understand how to necessarily cope or manage or deal with that. And so I think that's where the true part of this comes, the work comes in from us as an agency or just within this work is really how do we provide support and training and really understand that matching process for a young person and a family and making sure that we're putting them in a predicament for that kid to be successful as well as that foster home, that foster family. And then that's also about understanding that true lens of a kid and where they come from and what does that mean for family connection and hopefully bridging those two gaps together to really help support that system because it's not just the foster parent by themselves, it's the foster parent, it's the family, and it's really you want to kind of gel those two together to really help make a true support system for that young person in care.
You've got boots on the ground, so we can do a quick flyover on this here. For somebody who may be thinking about becoming a foster parent, somebody might say, listen, I want to do this, but I think this is too much for me. Sometimes it's not. Right. They just don't know what it takes. Right. So how do you answer the person that says, what does it take for me really to be a foster parent?
Yeah, I think it just takes caring, man. Just, you know, the want to do more for others, you know, and look at kind of what you have around you. And, you know, I like to look at it from a situation of, you know, how can I help better someone else's life who might not have the experiences that my kids had or somebody else might have had. And so just coming to that conversation with just open, you know, mindset and just that will to want to do for others, I think that's where, you know, the strength lies. And especially here in New York, right? Like that's just the strength of the city, right? We all come together to kind of, you know, even through COVID and all these other things that really kind of help support one another. And that's the same thing with foster care, right? It's like, how do we bridge these communities together to support young people and really help them? Because they have dreams too, right? Like, you know, they have dreams, they have aspirations, they're kids, they have the same thing that, you know, my kids may want to be or anybody else's kid. And so, you know, we just want to make sure we can provide those opportunities for them.
And so what's the message for people out there when it comes to children and foster care from your mouth?
I think the message is just, you know, we need you, you know, we need more foster families, you know, but also we want to make sure that our kids have access to be able to do things that other kids get to do. And I think really just being able to bring, you know, folks together to understand that need and understand that, you know, these kids have traumatic experiences. These kids have, you know, you talked a little bit earlier about the kind of behavior and that you've gone through. Those are just traumatic experiences. So really, the honestly is just understanding this population just like we would with any other population and understanding the need and how can we best meet that.
You know, we talked a little bit about the families and social workers a little bit earlier. We talked about the possible for, you know, the fact of how overwhelming it could be. When you have, you know, social workers who are really doing this work, working between the families and the children and JCCA and other outside, there could be a potential right there for some heavy lifting. How do we work and guard social workers? You know, we talk about parents being burnt out. How do we deal with social workers and the whole fact of being burnt out?
Yeah, I mean, within social work, we always talk about self-care, right? Like, you know, we are our own tools, right? And so if we're not at our best, we can't help support other folks at their best. So for me, that starts with supervision, that starts with coaching, that starts with just agency culture, right? In terms of how well do we treat our case planners and our case managers, and then in a sense, you know, how well do we really support their well-being when they need, you know, resources or when they need training and when they really need support around their tough cases, right? Because like you said, it's not just the youth, the foster parent, and that parent. It's also that social worker that's involved that also is managing multiple cases with different layers of issues going on. And so for us, it's really about understanding our workers, you know, really coming through and how do we start from day one from training? How do we start day one from matching in with social supervisors? And then ultimately, how do we promote self-care and those workers really kind of taking time for themselves?
So for somebody who's thinking about becoming a social worker, right? What advice do you give them? Because you know, we see that career is,
Yeah.
you know, it needs improvement.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also know it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
What advice do you give somebody who's thinking about it?
I mean, for me, it's just about, you know, as you find something you want to do, I feel like it's a calling, right? Like, you know that you're not going to be able to save the world, but you can save one person, right? And so if you can at least come in with that mindset of understanding that the highs, you know, the highs and lows kind of, they have very ebb and flows with that, and that you just a person that can create change, and that you being in this profession, you will get to do that a lot more than, you know, what you might get to do in any other profession, and just understanding that we need you and that families need you. And so this is a really good part of the work.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin, for
Thank
coming
you, sir.
and sharing. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and really how all that you're doing to make a difference in the lives of individuals and families as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I also realized I missed the bow tie memo. Like you, Ray, I didn't get the memo. Since what you got today, maybe next week will be a little bit different. Jestin Jennings, thanks so much for
Yes,
being with
sir.
us, brother.
Thank you.